Hi, and welcome to the Fancy Comma YouTube. Today, I'm joined by Madeline Burchard, a digital media specialist at the Allen Institute, where she creates and manages content for social media platforms like Bluesky, Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Passionate about making science accessible, she uses her skills in writing, design, video production, and social media to engage the public. She holds a BS in molecular environmental biology from UC Berkeley and an MS in Science Communication from the University of Edinburgh, where she researched the impact of COVID-19 on science museums' social media. Outside work, she enjoys reading, kissing her cats, and providing social media support at her husband's bookstore, Charlie's Queer Books in Seattle, Washington. Welcome, Madeline. It's so nice to have you on today. What drew you to science communication, and how did your early experiences shape your path into digital media?
Thank you for having me on, Shiva. I was first drawn to SciComm as a career path during my first try at graduate school at San Jose State. My professor mandated that all her grad students had to teach sections of a Bio 101 course. Begrudgingly, I accepted teaching a Bio 101 lab section and discussion section. And what I thought was going to be a really tedious thing that I would just check the box of ended up getting me hooked on talking about science to the public. So I ran lab sections and discussion sections for Bio 101. And not only did I enjoy it, but I discovered I was actually pretty good at talking about science and breaking it down. And from there, I did a series of science communication jobs and public relations jobs. And I really should have known that it was a career path I wanted to go down. One of my first SciComm jobs, when I look back, was being an animal caretaker for the Lawrence Hall of Science in the Berkeley Hills. And a lot of that was science communication and public engagement, talking to kids about iguanas and chinchillas and tarantulas. So, I've always it's been important to me to talk about science. I love science. It's one of those topics that if I feel I'm in a safe place, I'll just blab about science. But really being forced to do undergraduate lab sections and teach science really showed me that maybe I can make this a career path. I just stuck with it. And about 6-ish years ago, I pivoted from general community relations, education outreach to social media.
I love that you mentioned that if you're in a safe space, you'll talk about science, because I've definitely been that person where you're talking to someone and then they say something scientific and then you chime in with like this out of nowhere science explanation and they just look at you like, interesting. And you're like, I thought you would find that as cool as I thought that was.
I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've been very into science. And it's just one of those topics that if it gets started, I'll keep wanting to talk about it. And I say about SciComm is I basically get paid to do that, which is kind of the ideal job path for me.
That is a great job path because very few people get paid to actually get paid to do science communication. The Allen Institute is really an important institute. Can you tell us a bit about the Allen Institute and what it is and what you all do?
Yeah, the Allen Institute was founded in 2003 by Paul and Jody Allen. Folks may know Paul Allen as the co-founder of Microsoft. And Paul and Jody in 2003 decided to generously fund the creation of the Allen Institute. We're known a lot for our neuroscience work, and we focus on foundational science and open science. So we're known in the neuroscience community for our brain mapping work. We are mapping whole brains, mapping circuitry, mapping neural connections. And then we take this work that we spent lots of money and time on, and we give it away for free to anyone in the world. And so the goal is, what can we do to support scientists? What are the big moonshot projects we can do that will then allow scientists around the world to do their science more efficiently and at a lower cost? So we focus on these big scientific moonshots. Since our founding, we've expanded to other scientific areas. So we do a lot of work in cell science. We have a really popular collection of cell lines that are used around the Americas, and actually one of them will be sent to space soon, to the International Space Station. Arun Sharma and Clive Svensson out of Cedars-Sinai are going to be embarking on a mission to grow organoids on the space station, and that will use our cell lines. And then we also do work in immunology. We just published the Human Immune System Explorer. That's essentially taking what we did for brain mapping and bringing it to the immune system. So we have a whole data set showing how the immune system ages over time in mice. And we're hoping that immunologists can use this as a reference when they do their own immunology work. And then we also collaborate with other institutions on things like synthetic biology. We advise on the funding of various risky science projects through our Allen Discovery Center program and our Allen Distinguished Investigator program. So we really focus on what are the really big scientific projects. We're approaching 1,000 people, and so we're really good at doing these large data pipelines. And then we make it available for free to anyone. So really lowering the barriers to scientific discovery. I mean, we've had people do entire PhDs without stepping foot in a lab. They use only our data sets. A lot of neuroscience research cites our resources, either as a reference or the data itself. So really focusing on foundational science and then creating those resources that then propel and lift everybody.
I'm a neuroscientist, and I've heard of the Allen Institute, and I actually forgot that you do that work. I really like Microsoft. I love Bill Gates. He's such a role model for me. I assume Paul Allen is similarly cool and philanthropic, and it sounds like he cares a lot about the brain, which is wonderful because at the level where you're that rich, where you can literally buy anything, you might as well be giving it back to humanity by investing in our scientific workforce. And I think that's really incredible. When I was in grad school, I think this was just starting. It was the Allen Institute that did this, and they wanted to create a whole map of the brain. And I don't know if it was the human brain. Do you know about this project where they were going to map out, like combine all these different studies? Do you know anything about that? That's like a major project.
One of our first atlases back in, I think 2003, 2004 was the Allen Mouse Brain Atlas. So our flagship work is around these big atlases. So both in mouse brain, in human brain, we have an expanding atlas, as well as other animal models like macaque and marmoset. To map to map any brain is a huge undertaking. We just published a huge data set for electron microscopy, and it took 7 years to do it. And we mapped a cubic millimeter of mouse brain, both the wiring and the activity. So these are, Manhattan style projects. This is lots of scientists working in coordination. The brain in general is the most complex organ in the body. As a social media manager, I get to talk to a lot of these people and kind of go into these labs and see these data sets. And when someone showed me just how densely packed even a mouse brain is, when we see neurons and we see these atlases, if we just see like a map of the neurons in the brain, it looks like there's all this empty space, right? But actually, these cells are so packed. It's like a mosh pit. It's like a neural mosh pit happening. There's no empty space in the brain. And so to map everything is like trying to map all the people and the arrangements of their arms and legs in a concert. It's incredibly complex. And then to add activity on top of that is nearly impossible. And actually, back, I forget when this was published, but a quote from a Scientific American article by Francis Crick inspired one of our most recent data releases. He said in Scientific American that it would be impossible to map a cubic millimeter of mouse brain, including both its wiring and its activity. And that's exactly what we did this year. We published that data set. So we kind of just decided to prove Francis Crick wrong, that we could do it.
That's great, because Francis Crick and James Watson, they stole Rosalind Franklin's work. One of them, I don't remember which one, made comments that were just wrong. And so they kind of fell out of favor for those two things. And good thing he was wrong. Like, there's Nothing better than proving Francis Crick wrong.
At the time, it was technologically impossible. They didn't have the technology to map the brain like that. And so right now we're kind of in a really fantastic renaissance for neuroscience because we not only have the lab tools to do slicing and mapping, the electron microscopy, but now we're having AI tools come online that really helps us take out some of the labor from mapping the brain. So we're doing these big data pipelines where we're slicing brains really finely and then mapping all the cells and then putting them back together in a 3D map and then doing tracing. And typically that tracing has been done manually by people. And there's millions and billions of cells in the brain. And you can't, if you just map them all manually, you would be doing that for the rest of human existence. And so now we have AI tools that, in combination with our scientists, are really allowing us to speed up by like probably a whole factor how fast we can map the brain. So, at the time that Francis Crick wrote, that quote about the impossible, it was impossible at that time. But we're just now hitting a point in microscopes and in AI tools, software tools, and even just like the amount of storage you need to store that neuroscience data. We often get asked, I get DMs saying, can I download the brain atlas to my laptop? We say, no, you literally cannot because it's too much data. We only recently had the tools to even store that data, but now we have like cloud storage that really allows us to store petabytes of neuroscience data. So at that time, it was truly impossible.
It was impossible, but thanks to many things, the advancements in technology, probably the work of scientists to continue persevering and figuring out what's going on in the brain and the brain structure. I'm a huge brain structure girl. Is there a human brain project at Allen Institute?
There is, yeah. So we have, I'm blanking on which consortium it is or what the consortium are called, but we do human brain work. A lot of our biggest data sets are with mouse, obviously because of sample size. But we're doing mapping work with human brain, especially with Alzheimer's, with postmortem brain donation. People who have really generously agreed to donate their brain. We're kind of mapping anatomically their brain and making the data sets available to Alzheimer's researchers. We're also right now embarking on a really ambitious study where we're trying to do, with a mouse brain, when you have a mouse, you can put electrodes in it and you can show it a movie. Actually, for this microns data set, we showed them, people at Baylor College showed them Mad Max and The Matrix, and then looked at their neural activity. And then after they pass, we mapped their brain and we were able to put over the anatomical map of the mouse brain, the electrical patterns. And so we're trying to bring the same concept to human. So with our collaborators at University of Washington, they're recruiting people who have a terminal illness and expect to pass in 3 years or less. And they're putting them through functional MRIs. And then when they pass, they're receiving the postmortem brain tissue and they're going to map those brains. So we're attempting to create a functional wiring map of the human brain. And of course, when you're working with humans, it's a little bit more complicated, thankfully. You can't do the same.
That's incredible.
But we're endeavoring to do it, but the program really does need more people signing up. But it's a special type of person. You gotta live within 3 hours of Seattle, terminal illness that's not related to the brain. So for example, if you have like liver cancer and you expect to pass in 3 years, that is the ideal person for this project. So they're attempting to do that right now. And then of course we have the Alzheimer's project. We also have a collaboration with local hospitals with their epilepsy surgeons, where if someone opts into it, so typically in epilepsy surgeries, in order to remove epileptic tissue, you have to bore through healthy tissue in the brain. And so we have an agreement with some surgeons where, with the patient's consent, our staff will be standing outside the surgery pavilion. And as soon as that healthy tissue is taken out, it's put in cerebral spinal fluid or artificial fluid. And it's literally like, it's like almost like science Uber brought to the Allen Institute. And there are people standing by here in this building waiting to receive that tissue and do EPHIS assays on it, slice it, map it. So we've already started in little ways, but we're attempting with the brain map study to do what we did with mice and do it in an ethical way with humans. It's very, very tough. You need really special people who are willing to sign up for it and do functional MRIs. Luckily, no electrodes, so it's just functional MRIs, and they basically play a video game and they have a rig, but nothing's inserted. So if folks are watching and they're interested, there's no electrodes in there. It's all functional MRI.
So where can people go to sign up for these studies? Is it just the Allen Institute website, I assume?
Yeah, if you go to our website and you search brain donation, you'll see a page that talks about all of our brain donation projects. We don't receive brains directly from people, but we receive brains through our partners. So we have a list of all of our brain donation programs. We're so lucky that, I see it on social media. People DM us and say, your research is really inspiring. How can I donate my brain to you? And we don't accept the brains, but we accept brains via our partners. So if you go to alleninstitute.org and search brain donation, the first link will give you kind of a breakdown of every human brain project that we benefit from. And on there is more information about the brain map study, as well as our Alzheimer's program and kind of general brain donation. A lot of people don't know, but we have brains here that people donated 30 years ago. A brain can be studied for a really long time. It's really the gift that keeps on giving. And we can go back to old brains and keep studying them. And it's very rare to get brain donations, but we're learning things that can help people in the future.
That's the coolest thing ever. Everything you just said is the coolest, greatest thing ever. I'm so excited about that because that was what I worked on in grad school, is mapping the brain in PTSD. And the hard part about it is there's all these different brain regions that are involved in PTSD, but it's like, what does this brain region even do? Like, even in people that don't have PTSD, what does the insula do? Or even the parahippocampal area, or another one was like frontal cortex, different parts. And then if you ask the literature, there's some places of the brain, I swear, every week there's a new brain region, a new brain function associated with that region. And it's so overwhelming.
One of the things that really surprised me when I started here was I thought we knew more about the brain than we actually do. It really is a mysterious organ. And it's kind of been mysterious because of technological limitations. Like we don't know fully how it works. We have folks who are studying addiction. We have people who are studying schizophrenia. We have a whole group related to consciousness. It's amazing how much mystery there is. I think people assume that scientists has figured out the brain, but we barely figured out the healthy brain, let alone the brain with disease. And that's where it's really cool to see on social media, we get tagged a lot in how people are using our atlases. And it really serves as a nice reference for a lot of this work. So if someone's studying PTSD or they're studying addiction, oftentimes they'll cite our reference atlases, they'll cite our healthy brain atlases and use it as a comparison tool. So that way they can reduce the amount of mice or the amount of animal models, but also show like, here's the high quality healthy brain atlas from the Allen Institute. Here's what we found and here's how it compares. So it's really cool to see the ways people use it. When I was in college at Berkeley, I was really excited when we got to the edge of our understanding of a topic. When I was in school, we didn't really understand fully about why parts of the genome had repeats. So there's parts of our genome where the nucleotides repeat over and over. And when I was in college, we didn't know why that was. And I always thought that was really exciting to get to the point where it's like, and that's a mystery. We don't know why this thing happens. With neuroscience, you encounter that all the time. There's so much that's not known about the brain. It's it's really exciting, and we learn new things all the time.
That's my favorite thing about neuroscience that I've loved ever since I was a little kid. Wow, I could totally nerd out about just this particular topic for hours, days, weeks, years. I've already done that. I went to Georgetown in DC, and Allen Institute has a very good reputation there and also around the world as being a leader in neuroscience research, and especially in creating the map of different brains of different things. I'm waiting for the human brain. It was not possible to do that when I was in college back in the early 2000s, but now computers are faster. It's easier to access to collect data. AI is a huge game changer. One thing that really frustrated me, and I don't know what the Allen Institute is doing about this, but I think the one problem is there's so many MRI studies, there's so much data being collected. It's like, what are we going to do with all this data? There's so many studies that have already happened. It's really expensive to do an MRI study. It used to be $700 an hour. I can't wait to see what the Allen Institute with
The
that.
open science part is also something that's kind of been pretty recent. A lot of folks have data sets. It's been really cool to see how the neuroscience community has started coalescing around common language for data sets. Because when I talk to scientists, they often share that's one of the problems is even just like talking about cell types in the brain, different people have different names for different cell types. And so creating a common language that unites the neuroscience community so that way data sets can be compared to each other. So for example, recently we added Parkinson's data to the Allen Brain Cell Atlas. And that wasn't data that we collected. That was data that was collected by other partners. And they were able to update their data sets with the kind of enough metadata updates that allowed it to play nicely on the Allen Brain Cell Atlas. So just having the common language about what you're talking about, it's sort of like if I said, Shiva, come to my house, my coordinates are 108 north, 97 west. And you're like, well, okay, but what's your address? So we're giving the neuroscience community a common address framework. And also, like, how do we talk about cells? How do we talk about different cell types? What's the name we use? Like, I was shocked to hear that even when neuroscientists talk about the same cell type, like, a tufted pyramidal cell in this layer, everyone has different names for it. It's kind of like, in biology, every plant and animal has a standardized name. We have a genus and a species. And only recently has that been the case in neuroscience, where it's like, okay, when we talk about this cell, what's our name for it? What are we calling it? In the open science world, there's been a lot of really great work in, it's not enough to publish your data sets and put it out there because there's so much data. But when you have like a common framework that we're all referencing, then you start getting a point where you can compare that data to each other. Then, of course, a lot of folks are really excited about there's so much data and we only have so many people who can analyze it at once, even if we've had everybody working and analyzing it for years and years and years. And so I hear a lot of excitement, both, at the SFN conference and just around the Institute around how could people, with the help of AI, start getting insights about this data. Because this data is so complicated, it confronts the limits of our own ability to perceive. So I think there's going to be a lot of really exciting discoveries found in the next 5-10 years. I almost feel like if you've ever been surfing and you start seeing a wave start cresting. So generally in surfing, you're supposed to start paddling when you first start seeing a wave form. And I feel like we're just starting to see the wave form in neuroscience. And it's really, really exciting, especially in the open science space. Open science is so important. It's not just about what can the Allen Institute discover. It's about what can everyone discover using our data sets and our resources.
That's kind of what I do at Fancy Comma too. I wish I was as established as the Allen Institute, but it's I really love what I do, and not a lot of people do this kind of work. And I feel so lucky every day, even when I'm just kind of suffering through a blog article, or I'm not feeling the happiest, but I'm on the YouTube grind. I feel really grateful that I can carry what's the metaphor here? Carry the flag of SciComm for everyone. And I feel like that's what Allen Institute's doing for neuroscience. So that's why I'm incredibly grateful to you all. And I I just can't imagine how wonderful it will be when we finally figure out what the anterior cingulate cortex does. That will be so great for millions of people that have different brain disorders, mood disorders, psychiatric disorders. Your job at Allen Institute is a very important one because I didn't know what the Allen Institute really did until I talked to you, but they're actually doing a lot. You have a lot to explain to people. So can you walk us through how you translate complex research into engaging social media content?
Yeah, so it often starts with a scientist being like, hey, we have this new atlas coming out, or I have a preprint coming out, or we have a paper package coming out. And then me and my team will often sit down with the scientific team and kind of have them explain it to us over and over again. So generally they start with the most technical explanation. And we're like, great. Why do people care about that? Why do you care about that? Why should the public care about that? Because of my scientific training, I can speak the scientific language with scientists. I'm pretty good at reading a journal article. I'm pretty good at asking the right question to them. I'll ask scientists like, why should your peers be excited about this? When you explain this to your kids, what do you say about it? Because I find often journal articles are written to be very cut and dry, and they're often written to be not too braggadocious. And so I often kind of like talk to people and try to find the hook in there. So me and my team, I'm really grateful to be a part of a really diverse team. There's me who has a scientific background, and then there's my coworkers who often come from journalistic backgrounds. We have a couple people on our team who used to be news anchors. We have some folks who used to be journalists for news stations. So we'll work together. Often with social media in particular, there's not enough time or space to go into full depth about a study. So we'll kind of pick like what's like the big nugget in this story? What's exciting and what does it mean? So if we find out that inhibitory neurons in one lobe work by inhibiting something in another lobe, okay, what does that mean? Like, how does that inform how we think about the brain and think about how it's connected? Luckily, scientists are often really excited to talk about their research. So it's kind of like following the excitement. What does this mean? Why are you so stoked for this? And so a lot of conversations. And I think folks also appreciate that the more you talk about it with them, the more they trust that you have their interests at heart. Because oftentimes folks, they feel a little nervous about media attention for their research. And so there's, a lot of conversations, a lot of trust building. But ultimately, folks are doing this work, especially at the Institute, because they want it to be shared. So they may post a paper that announces a new cell atlas. And the whole point of what they're doing is for people to know about it. So I feel really lucky that here at the Institute, people are drawn here because they want their science to get out there. They don't want to just hide it in their CV or in their works. They want people to know about it. So they're often pretty jazzed to help us get out there. They're usually very cooperative with getting media, getting really cool visuals, which makes my life easy. So I would say a lot of conversations and asking the right questions and following where their excitement is. They're very excited about the research. So what's the portion of this that they're particularly excited about? And kind of seeing their eyes, where their eyes light up.
So do you find that since you have a science background, you have a BS in molecular and environmental biology? So are you on the scientist vibe? Are you able to establish a rapport with scientists easily by being like, hey, I'm a scientist too? Or like, how does that work for you?
So usually folks don't clock me as a scientific person at first. And this is probably for a lot of reasons that I'm sure women in the audience will relate to. Often I kind of have to wheel that out very explicitly that, I was an RA, I worked in labs, my background is in science. Typically folks don't assume that about me, especially working in communications. And I imagine for folks who are science writers, this is the case where they assume you're coming to this from journalism and then coming into science journalism. I would say about half the people I meet in SciComm are scientists who come into science communication versus coming from the other direction. So usually it's something I'll just disclose in a very artful way. And I think sometimes folks will clock it by the questions I'm asking. So if I have a comfort with scientific language, if I'm, asking, are you okay with us sharing this preprint, or would you prefer we share after peer review? Then I think at least they'll trust that I have an understanding of the culture of science and what's important to ask. But often in my career, I've had to prove it over and over again that I have a scientific background. It's not often what's assumed.
Do you feel like a scientist when you're interviewing other scientists?
It's almost like, when I talk to people from my hometown, I feel like I'm from the same hometown as them. Because I feel like science is a culture you're brought up in. And so in a way, I feel like I'm part of the same culture. And I understand kind of their competing demands. If they're about to publish, there's a lot of work that happens before getting published. I think I feel like a fellow science enthusiast. I'm a science cheerleader. I wish there was like a more obvious way to like make it apparent from the beginning. But honestly, even if I like wore my resume on my body, if I made like a dress that just was my resume, I think like most women in science, it's something you have to kind of say over and over again.
The reason I ask you that is because I also do a lot of science communication and science journalism work, and I'm still actively publishing in science, but I still, when I talk to an actual scientist, I don't feel like a scientist. They see me as a journalist. I'm obviously more of a writer than a scientist. And I guess you could say the loss of my scientific identity is like, I'm now a like comms person to them in the English world. But then as a science writer, you're not totally in the literature world either because you're very highly analytical. One of the weirdest things about me as a science writer is that I actually find Shakespeare really confusing. Writing people love Shakespeare, but to me, I had a Shakespeare book and I used it to prop my window open when I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts in the summer because my AC didn't fit properly in my window. So my friend or someone gave me the complete works of Shakespeare, and that was helping me cool my apartment. But that's interesting. And I agree with you about this resume thing. I've told people my credentials and they have just told me that my credentials are false. So
Yeah.
I think that's really hard for women in science. Women in science aren't the only people affected by this, but it's just hard too because there's a lot of reasons that what we do is actually really difficult. And I interviewed a woman that does public relations in Latvia. And I always think of her words lately. Every time I'm having like a really weird day, like just like the weirdest problem ever in my work, I'm like, why is my life like this? And then I think about her interviewing these physics people, and she would try to hunt down these physics people and ask them questions out in Latvia. And she would just be like, wow, I lead an interesting life. And we kind of do lead a very interesting life. We're doing the work that is so important, but there's not a great infrastructure or really culture around this work, and a lot of it's taken for granted. The Ellen Institute is a large organization, so you definitely need social media people, but I feel like science itself also needs that as well, because there's like so many reasons. But the life of a science background, science writer, journalist is so interesting.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about how interesting this life is because you don't go to the lab, you know science, you talk about science, and everyone's like, oh, you're not a scientist. And then you go talk to actual scientists. I just interviewed a scientist and I felt so overwhelmed in that experience because I was like, I really wish I was also doing science. This is so cool. I have so many questions. It's like, but it's so fun because this is what I feel that I was made to do. Do you feel like that? You must really enjoy working at the Allen Institute.
Yeah, I do. It's really, really fun. I feel like it kind of intersects a lot of passions. I've always enjoyed kind of digital culture, internet culture. I've always enjoyed science, and so it's really cool to combine it. And I really love the open science mission of the Allen Institute. It's very rare to have mostly independently funded science orgs who their sole mission is giving away what they find. So it's really, really cool. My first year I worked here, I was sent to SFN for the first time. And I was just kind of learning what was the impact of the Allen Institute on neuroscience. I was working the booth and I kept asking people, oh, have you heard of us? Have you heard of our resources? And they're like, well, yeah, I've heard of you. After the fifth person, I was like, I feel like I'm asking a dumb question. Because every single person I talked to had cited the resources at some point. So it's really cool to be the digital voice for such an influential organization and to feel really aligned with the mission of it. It's really inspiring to see the way people are surveying the science landscape and thinking really intelligently about where can we plug in as an institute? What is needed right now in the life sciences? And where can we uniquely be helpful in that? And that's actually how the institute was formed. Was Paul Allen, along with Jody Allen, was wondering, how come we don't understand Alzheimer's? How come we don't understand these brain diseases? And he assembled a group of neuroscientists to tell him what needed to happen in order to understand these things. And they're the world's top neuroscientists. And they all said, we need to map the brain. We don't have a map of the brain. And this is a big problem in neuroscience. And with his generosity, made it happen. And that kind of ethos continues today, where we're looking at, what are the big gaps in the life sciences that we can uniquely fill and make available at no charge to anyone in the world. And that's a really cool way of thinking about science. It's definitely a privileged position to be in. And so I really appreciate the way in which the Institute uses its power and its privilege to find the biggest areas of impact in life sciences.
I mentioned it twice and I kept wanting to be like, I have to explain what SFN is. It's every year the Society for Neuroscience, which is SFN, has a conference. And in case you didn't know, neuroscientists, non-neuroscientists, this is like the conference to go to. It's huge. It's a huge conference. I went for like 10 years straight. In 2004, I was like, I want to go to a conference, a neuroscience conference, because I think my professor or my TAs recommended to like go to it. And I lived in Massachusetts at the time. I was attending MIT, and the conference was in San Diego, California. I had so much fun because the cool thing about SFN is everyone in neuroscience is there. And you can get a lot of like free swag. I have like an Eppendorf pen. I used to have a pink translucent Western blot box that I used to store jewelry in. It's just a fun time.
It's the largest scientific conference in the world, I learned.
Really, it's so fun.
It's the largest in the world. It's the biggest scientific conference, period. And we're really proud of our conference swag. We put a lot of thought into it. The first year I went in DC, we gave out umbrellas that on the underside of the umbrella had our exospin imagery, which is this beautiful blue neuronal like tracing imagery. We developed a microscope that allows us to image the whole mouse brain at once in like really high resolution. And we put those images on the underside of these umbrellas we gave out at our booth. So we're very proud of our swag game. And we try to like innovate on it every year. So last year we gave out playing cards that have a bunch of our images like UMAPs and our atlases and our exospin imagery on it. We're very proud of our SFN reputation. And it's always just so cool. Obviously it's nice when we discover something, but really it's all about seeing what people do with the data. So I love just talking to people. I'll go around to posters and look for people that cite our sources and just ask them like, what have you found using our data? What have you discovered? So it's really cool to connect with the community that way and just see what people have done with all the data sets and resources we work really hard on. How do they fly with it?
You sound very connected to the scientific community as doing social media for Allen Institute. So maybe I can segue. Okay, I could totally talk about SFN all day too. I don't even know where it is this year. I think it's somewhere far away from me because I get that email every year and I'm like, that's so far away.
Yeah, it's in San Diego this year. So SFN can only be held in 3 cities.
Because it's so big.
It's so big. Only 3 cities have conference centers large enough: DC, Chicago, and San Diego. So it rotates between the 3. So this year it's in San Diego, which I'm very excited for.
That's great. There's a really good place. I don't know what it's called. I only know like when I leave the San Diego Convention Center, I go to Gas Lamp District, and there's like this place that sells fish tacos, and I used to go there and get fish tacos, but it's been over 10 years since I've been there. But I feel like if I went to SFN in San Diego, I could still find that place. If it's still open, I could definitely. And the Ghirardelli place, oh man, I have so many good memories of that SFN conference in 2004. That was so fun because it's just like a party, a science party. And I had work to do. I just sat there. The energy was so good in the conference room. You just go there and get so inspired by everyone doing amazing stuff. I just co-authored a paper in an alcoholism journal with someone that I met at a poster at SFN. Love that conference so much because you can stay connected with everyone. You feel like you're part of something really big and amazing, which I always love. Shifting gears kind of, but not really. You have your finger on the pulse of neuroscience and science communication at Allen Institute. Tell us about the Allen Institute's dealings with Bluesky. For people that may not follow social media as closely as we do, Elon Musk announced that he was changing the name of Twitter to X, and the algorithm changed. And that was one of the weirdest things for me because we were doing social media. We thought we had the algorithm figured out perfectly, and then everything changed. And then everyone left X because they didn't like it. And they went to Bluesky, which I'm still not on Bluesky because I don't have time to be on so many social media places as a single person. So, but you were ahead of the curve with Bluesky. So tell us about that. How did that come about, and what lessons did you learn from that transition? And was this a personal transition or Allen Institute transition?
It was definitely an Allen Institute move. Early on in kind of the Elon Musk involvement with X, I started getting a sense that things may get interesting. And so I started parking the Allen Institute handles on different X competitors. So I parked the Allen Institute handle on Mastodon, I did it on Bluesky. There was a couple of kind of emerging possible contenders for who would be the like microblogging competitor. So as soon as Musk kind of started taking over X, I started parking those handles. Because like one of the most frustrating things as a social media manager is if you start a new account and someone already has your name. So as soon as I could, I started gobbling up the Allen Institute handles. And it became clear to me as I got into the platforms that Bluesky was the most likely contender as a competitor. So for a minute, we started kind of posting every now and then just to keep the account warm. And then I think it was after the inauguration, for the first time ever for the Allen Institute, we were losing X followers. And not because we had done anything wrong, but because people were deactivating their accounts and making Bluesky accounts. So we saw a decrease in X followers. Even just on the timeline, I saw a lot of people announcing, I'm no longer posting here, follow me on Bluesky. And luckily, we already had our handle. We already had content on there. And so as soon as that happened, I immediately, talked to all my bosses and I'm like, I'm going to start posting more frequently in Bluesky now because something is happening in the scientific world in particular. The scientists have all agreed they're going to Bluesky. And then I believe a Nature article came out that talked about people moving to Bluesky, which only caused more people to move to Bluesky. So once the Nature article came out, that really solidified it for me that we're going to have to make Bluesky part of our social media strategy. So luckily I was already there. I started, slowly posting on X like, hey, FYI, for no reason in particular, if you want to find us on Bluesky, here's where we are. And we started following collaborators, started following people who are kind of friends of the Institute. And I started posting more content. And I think because we were already on there and we had started posting as soon as there was that wave of people leaving, we got to be ahead of the curve. We weren't playing catch up. We were quickly establishing ourselves as the go-to neuroscience account on Bluesky. And I think right now we're roughly tied with SFN on Bluesky. But because we didn't wait to see for too long if it's going to be a thing, we just started posting to it. We started engaging with people. We started making starter packs. It really helped establish ourselves. and we didn't have to be late to the party. So it's been interesting to see the ways people use it. It definitely, in many ways, feels like the heyday of science Twitter. And really, we're seeing, in terms of our audience, we're seeing the journalists and the scientists go to Bluesky. So I think the future of social media is probably going to be more platform fragmentation, much to the chagrin of most social media managers, because it just means more platforms. But really, Bluesky is where our scientists and our journalists are, and our educators sometimes. So it's been interesting to see the way the culture kind of moved. We still have folks who are on X, and some folks maintain dual accounts and they post to both. But I'm really proud of our team's ability to keep our pulse on the culture. Like I put a lot of time into keeping up with digital culture and internet culture. And because of that, our team was really prepared to meet the moment when it came to the exodus.
That's incredible. I'm still shocked by that transition, honestly, because I was on Twitter a lot. Twitter was so useful. And then overnight, it became much less useful to me. And the whole website changed. The most shocking part was a lot of people just left. People have asked me multiple times, is Fancy Comma on Bluesky? Are you on Bluesky? And I'm just like, no, I don't have time. Like, I already have like all these social media. You can find them in the description box, along with the Allen Institute's social media handles. I'm going to put both of those in the description box to check out the amazing stuff happening at Allen Institute. But yeah, that was a very interesting time. It's just another reminder. Don't get too comfortable with some technology because things will always change.
Yeah. And it's always weird. Like, I consider myself a social media expert, but in many ways, it's impossible to be an expert because algorithms change, platforms change, societies change. The way we use the internet and we use social media is always impacted by culture and society. So once you think you've mastered it, then it has a way of humbling you. So, like, for example, when TikTok came online, people were like, are we doing TikTok? Is this a thing? Um, and as soon as I could, I was making TikToks for the brands I was representing. Like surfing, I was like, you have to, as soon as you start seeing the wave form, you have to start paddling. You can't, stare at it for too long, and you have to kind of just take action. It's always shifting, just like society is always changing. The way we use the internet, the way we use social media, has always been changing. And so it's constantly humbling.
Great way to put working in social media. I don't think I would put it that kindly. When I did social media, I was so exhausted. I had to watch the news. I had to see what everyone was saying. I had to see what the competitors too who I was working with was saying. I had to see what is my actual opinion on this topic. I had to come up with my opinion, which was the hardest part after analyzing the whole world. This was in COVID. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much work. I worked so much back then. Hopefully for Ellen Institute, there's no one that's actually actively commenting like, don't fund brain research.
We have our own versions of like hecklers, but I'm used to it. Every brand has those people that will reliably comment on your stuff. I've started doing content for Allen Institute that features me and my face on screen. And that was really terrifying because then people could comment on me and my voice and how I look or don't look. And so far, people have been very, very nice on the Institute accounts. I get like scientific heckling, so people who disagree with what we're doing or they wish we did it on a different animal model.
Like, oh, this is great, but can you please do it on like zebrafish?
Yeah, or rat. We get a lot of rat requests.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Is it like scientists?
Yeah.
Can you please also do this one? Because my thesis is due next week and that's the study that we have to do. So please, Allen Institute, can you help me out?
Usually it's kept pretty professional. We do have some folks who they get a little spicy on social and it's like, I'm reading this. I see everything. So most of the time people are pretty tame, except for on our paid Facebook ads. Those are the weirdest comment sections.
What are your comment sections like on your paid Facebook ads?
We had an ad going for a while that was promoting our consciousness research. And we got a lot of folks who their opinions about where consciousness comes from is different than our opinion. So they may believe it comes from, crystals, or it comes from their religion. And so we kind of see where our science and other ways of thinking put up against each other.
That's an interesting conversation. But honestly, Facebook paid ads, people comment and they're like, I hate this product. And I'm like, why are you even reading this?
If they come at us like from a really negative point, like this is stupid or whatever, I'll just ban them. That way they don't have to see our ads, because people also don't realize they're seeing an ad. And so they'll get angry that they're seeing it because they never followed us. We'll get folks who say like, this is fake or this is not real. As a social manager, when I see good faith questions or good faith comments, I'll try to interact. We did a paid ad around a story about our microns data set. And the microns work shows visualize a cubic millimeter of mouse brain. And so people see that and they think, well, that's fake because that's not the shape brains are in. And so we'll have folks being like, is this SpongeBob's brain? What is this? And I'll be like, no, it's actually a cubic millimeter of mouse brain.
On the paid ads, you respond to the people.
Exactly. I see it as, an opportunity. The people who are commenting may or may not have regular encounters with folks who work in science. And so this is an opportunity, if it looks like it's good faith and they're asking a real question and they seem to be curious, I will answer the question. Because to me, it's an opportunity. I think, more than ever, we need to meet people if they're coming at us in good faith. It's part of the work to engage with them. We only get so far if we talk to fans. We have to go beyond fans.
Yeah, I love that. I've been saying that for years. I said that in COVID. I still say that. I feel exhausted, but finally I'm starting to meet people that are like on the same page as me. Like those weird questions that you're like, oh, that's such a weird question. It's like they want to know this. Like, why don't you help them on their knowledge journey about your science topic, and maybe you'll make a new friend or something, instead of being like, oh, that's a weird question.
That's stupid, or why would you think crystals would do anything?
Yeah. As a freelancer, there's certain projects I won't work on. Someone approached me and was like, can you please write about this healing crystal? This is like a healing frequency. And I was like, I've never learned anything in physics that would make this true. So I got out of that project as soon as I found out it was about that. I just dropped that like a hot potato. But other times, Amy Weldon was on here and she was talking about some really weird physics thing that Lawrence Livermore did. And I was like, that doesn't make sense. But apparently it did make sense. My brain doesn't really understand it. I have studied a lot of science in my day, and I still don't believe some science. So it's tough though. I get it. Like I see this all the time online, like, oh, this person's asked this question. And it's like, yeah, they are curious about this. Like you can try to have a good faith conversation, and sometimes you can't have good faith conversations, and that is the hard part about social media. I would hope that the Allen Institute doesn't have like brain science deniers. I would find that utterly heartbreaking.
The nice thing about the Open Science mission is that people can look at the data themselves. It's open to them. And you never know who may be interested. We had a gentleman who commented on our Microns ad that he thought it was fake and it was just an ad for AI. And I could see he lives in Georgia and like, we're a long ways from Georgia, but if you're ever in Seattle, we're happy to show you where the science happens if you want to see it for yourself. And you never know when someone may actually take you up on that. And not only may their awareness be expanded, but think of all the people they interact with. That, I commented this on the Allen Institute and then they gave me a tour. And now they're going to tell their buddies. So you just never know. We get a lot of folks who have their own theories about scientific concepts, and I try to model scientific thinking with them. When I worked at Berkeley, I was a research associate in a plant genetics laboratory, and I was in charge of staffing the phones that the public could call. And we studied a disease called sudden oak death. And a lot of people called us with theories about how to cure sudden oak death. One included wind chimes. People would call and be like, I think if you install wind chimes and play the wind chimes, you'll cure the trees. And that job taught me how to model, objectiveness and be like, oh, interesting. Can you tell me more about your theory about wind chimes? And I'd be like, we're not explicitly studying that, but try it for yourself. install the wind chimes, tell us how they work. We're not explicitly studying this, but it's certainly a theory. And we encourage you to follow along with our research as we explore what's going on with sudden oak death.
I could learn a lot from you about engaging in conversations with people. If someone told me, like, hey, if you play this sound for this tree, it will get well, I would just be like, are you serious? I mean, it's possible. There's so much information in the world. It's so hard to ascertain whether any of it is true or not. Like, I feel like I could be convinced about this like frequency study. But another weird thing I was going to say is when I was an undergraduate at MIT, they had all of our undergraduate emails listed on the MIT website because this was back in 2005. And so people would email us with their like brilliant ideas and they'd be like, hey, this is a great idea I came up with. And they would CC like us, our professors, like the whole department. I'd be talking with my friend. I'm like, did you get that guy's email about like how he has this like brilliant idea, like this invention? I was just like, wow.
In that thinking is someone who's interested in science. They're interested in the scientific process. They're showing curiosity. And so wherever I can, I try to channel the curiosity. Like if they're talking about wind chimes, it means they care about the trees. They care about sudden oak death. So even though to me it's far-fetched, the idea that that's curing anything, behind that is someone who cares about saving oak trees. The one thing I've learned both in my career and through University of Edinburgh is a lot of people's thoughts about science and the relationship to science is only partially about the science itself and kind of the facts of it. The rest of it is their relationship to power. A lot of studies have shown that people who are flat earthers tend to hold a lot of knowledge about physics and about planetary bodies, which just seems strange because then how could you think the earth is flat if you know a lot about geology, you know a lot about planets? But really they're flat earthers because they distrust the government. And so it's partially about the science, but it's partially about the relationship to institutions of power. So the medical system, the government, whatever is the force of power in their lives, a lot of it's about that. Sometimes just as much or more than their belief in the facts is their relationship to institutions of power. We see this a lot in kind of like the medical world, where if you have, let's say you got diagnosed with PCOS, and you're trying to get help in the medical system and you feel like you're not getting the help you need, it would be so easy to, one, distrust the medical system and feel like you're just a number, and then to also look for someone else that can help you, whether or not what they're giving you is true or backed up by data, because you're just desperate for relief. And then that can feed into more thoughts about, big pharma and science and biotech. And that's where I hope when I am the digital voice for brands, I can help people form relationships to an organization that has power. The Allen Institute has a lot of power. And so if I can form that relationship, maybe it is a new data point for them in how they perceive capital S science.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone explain that before because I've definitely noticed that. I went to the Thunder. Thank you, by the way, Seattle, for making the Supersonics the Thunder because we just won the playoffs. But this season, I went to Thunder versus Mavericks, and Kyrie Irving is on the Mavericks. And I think he's a flat earther. Me and Kyrie Irving were in the same room. And the Thunder, we're all chilling. But the whole time I was thinking about science communication as I watched the Thunder beat the Mavericks. Those are important conversations. I don't see them happening in science, but I don't think it's because people wouldn't want to have them. I just think that science doesn't really have the bandwidth for those conversations, which is probably why you're having this conversation with me. I have my company, Fancy Comma, you work at Allen Institute. Neither of us are really doing science every day because that would take up a lot of my brain space. But I really feel like these conversations are so important. And they're also pretty fun. Going back to your work as a social media manager, we already talked about your migration, Allen Institute's migration from Bluesky to X. What was navigating that exodus like for you as someone working in social media?
Very stressful. One of my goals as a social media manager is to always increase our followers. on top of having really good engagement. When I started seeing our followers go down, I was very stressed. I ran to my boss's offices and I was like, it's not us. Everyone's losing followers. I was very worried about like my job and looking like I was failing at my job. And luckily they're very understanding. But yeah, the last couple of years have been very stressful because it's like changing faster and faster. And not even in like predictable ways. So I think it was stressful. I think I felt, once we started having our Bluesky followers rocket, I felt a little better. But a lot of this job is just chaos. you think you're going to have a chill week and then something happens and it's chaos. Something happens in the news cycle, something happens at your organization. You never know. And so in the moment, I had to get my bearings and be like, what do I know is happening? What does the data tell me? What are the conversations I see happening online? I do a lot of like, I call it like cultural anthropology, where I'm just looking through people's conversations and being okay, how are people talking about this right now? So kind of like almost being like a modern day anthropologist. How can I see what the conversations are like? So like very stressful. A lot. I definitely felt scared. Just like I feel like I'm failing. I should never be losing followers. So yeah, I think very, very nervous. So definitely, for this job, having ways to cope, having ways to de-stress and kind of and like dissociate a little bit of like, I can't control what these people are doing. I can't control what powerful people do. I'm kind of along for the ride. And thinking about like the scientific community is undergoing something right now. How could I use my power and privilege to help? So if neuroscience is moving to Bluesky, how can I be there to be a resource? How can I use our clout, use our resources, and be not just like part of the community, but how can I lead the neuroscience community on Bluesky? How can I be part of the organizing? And I mean, very much like kind of a lot of the content you're doing with talking to folks who have exited the federal government. Like, how can I meet this moment and not just be a part of it, but how can I be a leader in the moment?
That's so important. And I think that's something that gets lost in a lot of social media because it's so reactionary. Like, oh, this happened. Now everyone has to do their social media posts on like X thing. I could come up with millions of examples. Taylor Swift announced a new album and everyone immediately posted stuff. But like, it's all well and good. Every time there's a new meme, you check your favorite brands to see what they've said. And that's cool too. But I feel like it's much better for humanity if every time there's something happening, your favorite brand gave you a bit of like guidance or like leadership or provided something for you besides just like serving up another meme, something that actually can help you live a better life in some way. And it's hard to say what exactly that would be as a meme. And also sometimes it gets overwhelming. There's some days where like there's a meme and I'm just like, I can't read social media today. I'm just going to go outside. Like, I love what you said also about becoming an anthropologist, because that's what I did when I worked in social media. I just thought of my brain as this machine that turned every single bit of information I could find into something really cool that could like inform people. And that's a really, really hard job. Like, what are the misconceptions people have about social media managers, especially in STEM? I have so many things I could say about the job of being a social media manager. My whole thing right now is looking at fast food companies, and like all of them have social media. All of them try to connect with you in these really relatable ways, or like different brands treating with each other. Like, sometimes it's just like, wow, this is a really interesting and weird conversation. Or like sometimes like this is an incredible conversation. Other times I'm like, why is like Wendy's talking to like Meryl? It's a thankless job because along with those tweets is like 100 people tweeting at them and being like mean to them. I think there's also a lot of social media bots now because sometimes I read content on the internet and I'm like, there's no way an actual person wrote this. Like the ones that are immediately criticizing you no matter what you write. We had an interview on here with a fired Fed and someone commented on one of the reels I did and said it was un-American. And I watched it and I was like, there's nothing un-American about this. Who wrote that? I deleted it because we're a positive space here. What are the misconceptions people have about social media managers? I don't know any of them.
I think, the biggest one is it's like a job where you just goof around. I think it's kind of seen as that. It's a job that's a lot of writing. When I have informational interviews with people who want to go into social media, the biggest piece of advice I give them is become a really good writer. Write in lots of different contexts. You have to be a really, really strong writer. It's like you're writing thousands of mini articles. So being a really good headline writer, being a really good call to action writer, it's a writing job primarily. It's a writing and reading job. So having a strong voice. It's also a job that's not a lot of socializing. So I think there's a perception that like social media managers are like party people. And I think PR in general has that or people assume that it's kind of like you're going to parties or you're socializing, but being a social media manager is a lot like being a photographer where you're behind the camera usually. So it's not really an extrovert job. It's very much a writing job. But instead of writing articles, you're writing thousands of mini pieces of content. So it's really a job that flexes your creative writing skills. And your ability to write in different contexts. It's not a goof around job. It's not a just go to parties job. It's a corporate communications job. I originally came to social media after working in corporate communications doing internal communications. Because I was really good at writing to employees, I just pivoted that to writing to the public. If you want to go into social, I advise people to practice writing, create a portfolio, write a blog, and develop a strong sense of voice and learn how to write in different contexts. Like, how I write on LinkedIn is different than how I write on TikTok. So learning how to like pivot your writing style for different contexts. It's only partially keeping up with kind of meme culture. And a lot of it's like, hey, you have a new update to the Allen Brainsell Atlas. How are you going to make sure people know about this? And they actually even see your post. It's also a job that takes a lot of creativity. That's probably like the biggest thing I've come up against is the constant creativity the job entails. Like, how can I not just show a photo, but how can I show it aesthetically? So it flexes a lot of different corporate communication skills, but the most important of all is being a very, very strong writer and being a really strong copy editor. Because typically, in my role, there's very little copy editing that's done by other people. If I need to get an update out about Map My Cells, our tool that helps people take their cell data and match it to our reference atlases, I have to copy edit myself. So I'm a really strong, not just tone of voice writer, but I know how to review my own copy for grammar, typos, what have you, because it's out there in front of possibly millions of people. So I think the biggest misconception is that it's just kind of goofing around, and people should know that it's a writing job primarily.
It's interesting. I never knew that about social media because when I see social media, it's so happy and chatty and it's like, oh, hey guys, like, what's up? Or like, but it does require a lot of research and it is very much communications focused.
Yeah, and even when it's kind of like looks like it's goofing around, that is done intentionally. So my husband used to be the social manager for the Oakland Athletics, and even when the copy was like, "No way," there was like a team of people debating if it should be "No way" or "Look at that home run." There's a lot of thought that goes into it, even when it looks really casual and off the cuff. There's actually a lot of thought behind it. So it's a lot of writing and copy editing.
So like when McDonald's posts like that really like all in lowercase, I notice all the fast food brands communicate in lowercase and I'm just like,
Yeah, because they're trying to make it look like they're just texting you. So even that is like a communications choice.
it is. It is a decision, a
And if
communication
you've ever
decision.
done any ghostwriting for executives, like you've done op-eds or anything like that, it's not just what you would say, it's what that executive would say. So they have to put yourself in the mind of like, okay, what kind of words does this person use? How do they talk? What do their sentences look like? So even when it looks like it's like, yeah, I see on TikTok all the time where brands will be in comments and they'll try to talk as if they are one of the people. And behind that is someone with lots of years of communications experience. It takes a lot of work to make it look like it's really off the cuff.
I never knew that because it's just shocking to me. I'm like, this is McDonald's. Why is it talking to me like it knows me? I'm like,
A comm strategy tactic because they want to create rapport with their customers.
and
It's
it
mark.
makes sense. And people like it too. Next time I see those, I will pay closer attention. There's a lot of decisions to be made in social media. What are you going to say? How are you going to say it? What is the goal of your communications? You kind of touched on this already. What advice would you give to someone who wants to break into science communication or digital media without formal training in it, especially people that have a science background?
I think the important thing is to develop a writing portfolio. So if you're coming from science, it's nice to have the science background, but if you're a hiring manager for a comms team, they want to know that you can write particularly. So developing a writing portfolio. When I first went to social media, I started by showing my work doing social media volunteering with nonprofits. So I had been a social media manager for a local education nonprofit, and I did as part of my position on a board. And I showed like, look, I did this fundraising campaign. It raised this amount of money. Here's some of the example posts I did and the example graphics I did. And I started making a social media portfolio. So I think if you're interested in writing, in social media, in journalism, you can start, even before you have an official role, you can start making a writing portfolio. You can start a blog, you can start a Substack, and just start showing when you write, what does it look like? What's your voice? What's your style? So if you want to pivot from science to comms, but you're stuck because in order to get the comms job, you need to show you can do comms, just start writing. And even if it's not published anywhere, it's an example of your work so that they can see, okay, this person can write and they can take this complicated topic and turn it into an article or a social media post or a video. So putting together a portfolio, I think, is really, really important.
One of the most important things in communications because I learned that people are less interested in your qualifications than what you can do for them. And yeah, when I say I'm an MIT and Georgetown graduate, I have worked in Congress, that impresses people, but I don't think that's what gets me hired most of the time as a freelancer. What gets me hired is people can imagine me doing the work that they want done. People think my skills are what they need, and people want to know what I can do for them. So like what I've done for other people. I was just talking to my former client today, and I was having a kind of down day, but then she reminded me that I'm really good at analyzing stuff and being really analytical and just analyzing stuff and writing about it. And I think that's something that's very valuable for science communicators. So just because you don't have a straight up comms background doesn't mean you, as a science person, can't succeed in comms. I feel like you definitely start becoming a comms person, but then you're like in this weird liminal space between science and communications where you're like both, but sometimes you're not seen as either of those. And that's really interesting to me. I feel like I'm constantly doing different stuff every day and taking on all these different roles. Even as a writer, you are a researcher, you do that anthropology stuff. There's many different pieces to that puzzle. That's the exciting part about working in this space because the work draws on so many different aspects of science, communication, everything. It's been great chatting with you and learning about the Allen Institute and about social media. And hopefully, our followers will check out the Allen Institute social media handles and see what all the amazing work you've been up to has been. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
I would love if folks could follow us, see our content. We're working hard on making really interesting, entertaining content. Some of our most recent content features me as the on-air talent, which is terrifying. But we're really proud of the work we're doing. And, like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things. We're trying to get the good word of open science out. September 15th through the 21st is Open Science Week. We're going to be sharing lots of stuff during Open Science Week. We welcome everyone to celebrate open science, even if it's not our open science. So we invite everyone to join us for Open Science Week.
So, what are you going to be doing for Open Science Week 2025?
So we have a whole digital campaign planned, including a new video that talks about what is open science. We're also hosting science trivia here in Seattle at one of our local pubs. Um, and we'll be sharing with our social media audiences the different forms of open science. So it's kind of like a digital celebration of the people who work really hard to make open science resources and then the impact those resources have. So we'll be kind of peeling back the curtain on a lot of our science and our data pipelines.
So, will you be posting about Open Science Week on the Allen Institute social media channels?
Yes, yeah.
I guess we can just direct our viewers to your social media to follow along and participate. I'm a huge fan of open science. It has been great to chat with you. Thank you for talking to me today.
Thanks for having me, Shiva. It's been a great time.